Previously on Battle 360, Japan strikes Pearl Harbor and America is at war. The aircraft carrier Enterprise leads the U.S. Navy as it strikes back. Now Enterprise is about to face the massive Japanese fleet at Midway. USS Enterprise, a fighting city of steel. She is the most revered and decorated ship of World War II. On this 360-degree battlefield, where threats loom, on the seas, in the skies, and in the ocean depths, the Enterprise's enemies could be anywhere and everywhere. There's nowhere to run when the war is all around you. Battle 360 USS Enterprise. Vengeance at Midway. This series is brought to you with limited commercials by the men and women of Enterprise Rent-A-Car. June 4th, 1942, 10:20 a.m. Bombers from USS Enterprise find their target in the middle of the Pacific. They are Japanese carriers Kaga and Akagi, part of an enormous Japanese fleet. Japanese Zero fighters have been distracted with earlier assaults. They tear apart the slower planes, but leave their home carriers unprotected. Perfect prey for the hunting dive bombers of Enterprise. 26-year-old Dusty Cleese spots his target, carrier Kaga.
Everything was ideal. We were up about like 20,000 feet, and they were coming towards us.
Cleese begins his dive, but all 32 bombers in the squadron plunge at exactly the same time, nearly causing mid-air collisions. To make matters worse, some dive too steeply.
Our plane is jerking around, and I don't know what's going on or why. My pilot had the throttle at the firewall just as hard as he could go. I could smell the water. He was just that close.
It is payback for Pearl Harbor, and it may be doomed before a single bomb is dropped. The overeager flyboys of Enterprise are looking for vengeance. They are diving into a trap. Flashback. The battle called Midway had actually begun 24 hours before. On June 3rd, 1942, USS Enterprise sails 900 miles from her home base in Hawaii, accompanied by fellow carriers Yorktown and Hornet. She is heading for a tiny American outpost on a remote atoll called Midway. 175 miles west, 4 Japanese carriers steam southeastward on a collision course. Imperial Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto plans to finish the job he started at Pearl Harbor.
The USS Enterprise is what the Japanese really wanted to take out. Yamamoto knew that if he could take out our carriers, they essentially would win the war.
The main force of Japanese ships headed toward Midway include 4 aircraft carriers: Kaga, Akagi, Soryu, and Hiryu. 7 battleships, 150 support ships, cruisers, destroyers, and tankers, 248 carrier aircraft, 16 float planes, and some 15 submarines. The American Armada is substantially smaller. 3 aircraft carriers, 50 support ships, 233 carrier aircraft, 127 land-based aircraft on Midway Island, and 8 submarines, outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, this is all that is left of America's Navy. The carriers were not present at the sneak attack, to Yamamoto's dismay.
He said, "We have no idea what we've done." He was definitely disappointed and worried.
Sinking those American carriers really became an obsession of Admiral Yamamoto's as the months after Pearl Harbor continued.
Those aircraft carriers come back to make a bit of a pain in the neck of themselves by attacking the Japanese in February at the Marshall Islands.
3 weeks later, the USS Enterprise strikes the Japanese force occupying Wake Island. And a week after that, Enterprise strikes at Marcus Island, just 1,000 miles from Tokyo. Then in April, Enterprise escorts USS Hornet in the Doolittle raid against mainland Japan. B-25 bombers launch from Hornet and drop bombs on Tokyo and several other cities.
The Japanese realize the home islands are vulnerable, U.S. Navy aircraft carriers are still out there and are still dangerous. So what we need to do is get rid of their aircraft carriers and then set up one more outpost further out into the Eastern Pacific.
One carrier, Lexington, has already been sunk a month ago. And now, Admiral Yamamoto plans to lure the rest of them into a trap. He'll target Midway Island.
Midway is close enough to Hawaii that it will be seen as a threat to the security of Oahu and Pearl Harbor, and yet it's far enough away that American air power in the Hawaiian Islands can't really make its presence felt during the forthcoming battle.
The American fleet has also lost one of its best leaders. Vice Admiral Bull Halsey has kept the Navy afloat for 6 months on nothing but sheer guts. Now he is out of action, felled by a rare variant of psoriasis, so severe he is hospitalized, his very life threatened. Admiral Chester Nimitz is still in command of the Pacific Fleet. Nimitz, a Texas native and a 41-year veteran of the Navy, is a shrewd and efficient commander. And though Nimitz is outnumbered and outgunned, he has an ace up his sleeve: the Japanese Code. The U.S. Navy has worked round the clock to crack the Imperial Navy's code. They determined that the Japanese plan an attack on a target called AF. But what is AF? Washington bureaucrats insist AF is Alaska's Aleutian Islands, the beginning of an assault on the U.S. mainland. But Admiral Nimitz believes the Japanese want the Pacific, not Alaska. The codebreakers come up with a ruse. They broadcast a radio alert saying that Midway has a drastic water shortage. Within 24 hours, the codebreakers have their answer. The Japanese Navy sends a coded message reporting a water emergency on target AF. Nimitz is right. AF is Midway Island. Admiral Nimitz has evened up the odds. The Japanese Navy is arriving in full force. But the Americans will be waiting. For the U.S., it is a true 360-degree battle. Target, Midway Island. Objective, protect the American base and inflict as much damage as possible on the superior Japanese fleet. Strategy, ambush with air, sea, and sub attacks. Nimitz knows that the Japanese will approach Midway from the northwest. So he sends his aircraft carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, to a staging point 200 miles northeast of the island. When the Japanese carriers come within range, American bombers will attack. And all signs point to the 4th of June as the day the enemy ships will reach the battle zone. Dawn, June 4th, 1942. It's clear and quiet as USS Enterprise floats near the exact center of the Pacific. Scout planes search for the enemy carriers, but they are too late. Japanese bombers, Kates and Vals, get the first hit at Midway. A force of 109 Japanese aircraft appear over the atoll. They tear into the American base, exploding hangars and cratering runways. It is like Pearl Harbor all over again. Back with Enterprise and her task force, sailors prepare for action. but haven't gotten word of the Midway attacks. Over on USS Yorktown, 21-year-old Oklahoma native Lloyd Childers, a radio man gunner, dressed alongside his brother Wayne. Childers had an odd sense that his chances of surviving his mission today were slim.
I put my wallet in my pocket, started to put my wristwatch on, and my brother was standing there. We were sharing a locker. I took my wallet out of my pocket, put the wristwatch, put it in the locker, and I said, "Wayne, if I don't come back, these are yours." He got a funny look on his face, but didn't say a word.
The morning's ominous tone gets worse when they reach the mess hall. It's a hearty meal of steak and eggs, a sign to the airmen that real trouble is ahead. Dive bomber pilot Dusty Cleese is a 26-year-old Naval Academy graduate from Coffeyville, Kansas.
Now, we always knew that anytime we ever had steak and eggs, that was going to be a busy day.
Somebody behind me says, "Last meal for the condemned men."
7 a.m. Reports of the attack on Midway reach the Enterprise. The flyers scramble to prepare for their launch. In Enterprise's ready room, pilots shake hands with one another, many for the last time. The ideal launch order is for the Wildcat fighters to climb into the sky first to protect the planes that follow. Then the torpedo bombers launch, followed by the dive bombers. The dive bombers are faster than the torpedo planes and can catch up. But it doesn't come off like clockwork this morning. Problems with plane jockeying on the flight deck cause delays. Some squadrons don't properly coordinate and become scattered.
The problem from the American standpoint is that at this point in the war, we really don't understand how to use our carriers in company with each other. So when the American carriers finally begin launching their aircraft, they put them up in such a way that you have squadron-sized groups going off and doing their own individual searches for the Japanese rather than putting together a coordinated strike with torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and fighter escorts.
SBD scout bomber pilot Dusty Cleese says goodbye to his friend Tom Eversole. Eversole pilots one of the slow, vulnerable torpedo bombers. His odds of returning from the battle are low.
He knew that he was on a suicidal thing, you know.
The torpedo bomber aircraft the men are flying, the TBD Devastator, is not a good airplane for the job.
In the torpedo plane department, the Americans have real deficiencies. It's underpowered, it's slow, it has to launch its torpedoes at very low altitude and very low speed.
Over on Yorktown, radio man gunner Lloyd Childers climbs into the back of his torpedo bomber, with his pilot, Harry Coral, up front.
When we were strapped in and everything ready to go, I picked up the mic and I told Mr. Coral, "Today's my 21st birthday. Theoretically, today I'm a man, so let's celebrate."
Moments later, Coral and Childers' TBD Devastator, lugging a 2,000-pound torpedo, roars down the flight deck and fights its way into the air. They'll have to fly nearly 2 hours to reach the Japanese ships. While the torpedo planes lumber into the sky, American forces have already begun the assault on the Japanese. 7:10 a.m. The first wave of the American attack begins. Bombers have launched from Midway Island to attack the Japanese carriers. The enemy warships open up with anti-aircraft fire. A typical Japanese aircraft carrier is bristling with weaponry. The Kaga, an important carrier in this fight, wields 5 8-inch guns that can reach out more than 10 miles. For medium-range work, it has 16 120-millimeter batteries, and for the close-in fight, 22 25-millimeter cannons. This anti-aircraft arsenal can unleash a murderous hailstorm of lead. 6 miles southwest and just under the surface, American submarine USS Nautilus scans the horizon. The sub is a scout for U.S. forces. Smoke from the Japanese anti-aircraft fire soon draws the attention of Nautilus. The sub moves closer, looking to make an attack of its own. But 180 degrees and some 800 feet overhead, a Japanese fighter plane spots Nautilus. The Zero swoops down to 200 feet and opens up with machine gun fire. Anything to damage the sub or force it below periscope depth so it cannot fire a torpedo. 90 degrees and 2,000 yards off Nautilus's port bow, the Japanese destroyer Arashi spots the encounter. It charges in and starts dropping depth charges. A depth charge is an explosive device designed to sink a submarine with a powerful underwater explosion. A fuse set will activate at a predetermined depth, detonates the explosive. Now the hunt is on. With a speed of 35 knots and armed with 8 torpedo tubes and 26 depth charges, Arashi is a sub-killer. Depth charges don't have to be direct hits. The explosions are designed to rupture or crack the sub's hull. Even a minor crack can compromise a sub's safety and sink it. The explosions miss Nautilus, but the sub takes no chances and dives temporarily. The U.S. submarine soon resurfaces, though, and strikes back. It spots a battleship. She sets up her target, then unleashes her torpedo. The American torpedo misses its mark. But it's threatening enough that Arashi devotes the next few hours to stalking the submarine. This is a small encounter in a massive engagement, but the sub hunt will have repercussions that will turn the tide of battle and determine the fate of the fleet. 160 miles west, the Japanese continue to Midway. But at mid-morning, Japanese scout planes report the presence of the American aircraft carriers. The Japanese fleet immediately breaks from its southeasterly course and heads northeast toward the American warships. But the destroyer, Arashi, stays behind to continue hunting the U.S. submarine Nautilus. With Arashi in the area, Nautilus will not come near the surface for fear that the destroyer will detect it and drop depth charges. If the submarine cannot come near the surface, it cannot use its periscope to sight targets and take aim, so it cannot fire torpedoes effectively. In changing course, the Japanese carriers soon steam right into the path of 2 American torpedo bomber squadrons. The torpedo bombers of USS Hornet spot the enemy carriers first. All 15 TBD Devastators roll in for the attack. Most of the lumbering airplanes do not even get close. Swarming Zero fighters and flak from enemy destroyers and battleships send them crashing into the briny water below. A single pilot, Ensign George Gay, actually gets his Devastator close enough to drop his 2,000-pound torpedo. But it doesn't explode.
As he approached, he got a bullet in the arm. Then he released his torpedo, and then he was so close that he had to come up to go across the Japanese carrier. Just as he got over the Japanese carrier, his engine quit. So he splashed down on the other side. And he tried to get his gunner out, but he thought the gunner was dead because he had talked to him at one point and then he never heard from him again.
Over the next few hours, George Gay will stay afloat using his life raft as camouflage, the sole survivor. 15 torpedo bombers and 29 men from the Hornet are all lost in a single attack. Ensign Gay is in the water less than 20 minutes when the torpedo bombers of USS Enterprise reach the battle area. As they drop close to the water to begin their attack, they too slam into ferocious anti-aircraft fire and attacks from Zero fighters. Most go down. But 4 Enterprise torpedo bombers manage to escape the deadly barrage and will eventually make it back to the ship. Unfortunately, Tom Eversole, friend of SBD pilot Dusty Cleese, is not among the surviving air crewmen.
I always cry thinking about it. He was my, very, very best friend, and he didn't come back.
But at this point in the battle, Dusty Cleese has more things to worry about. Dusty is part of a dive bomber group well behind the torpedo planes. Heading up Dusty's air group is Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, a 40-year-old Buffalo, New York native. He normally flies a fighter, not a bomber, and he's leading this group like a bat out of hell.
He was a fighter pilot. His whole idea was, it's the one that hits first is the one that's going to win. So we were going at 190 knots.
Dauntless dive bombers usually fly at 160 knots. At 190 knots, they may run out of fuel before they can return. Also among McCluskey's air group is Bruno Guido. Back in February, Guido's quick action and heroism diverted disaster when a suicide bomber targeted Enterprise at the end of the Marshall Islands raid. Guido scrambled from his catwalk battle station to the machine gun in the rear seat of a dauntless dive bomber parked on the flight deck. He opened fire on the Japanese suicide bomber, forcing it to crash. Also flying in the squadron is 19-year-old radio man gunner Don Hoff. He is still getting adjusted to life aboard the massive floating city called Enterprise. The enlisted men's quarters are deep in the bowels of the Big E. It's nearly 2,000 bunks, 4 deep, where Hoff got a rude awakening on his very first night.
My bunk was the bottom bunk, the one that's right on the floor. I was in there just in my shorts, and I woke up about midnight or so, and there was hot water that was splattering on me, splattering in my face, and I just hot on my chest, my stomach. Then I realized that I wasn't in a dream. I look it up there, and this guy is standing there urinating on me. He wasn't sleepwalking. He was one of the local squadron drunks. They pushed this guy, and he was staggered on down there, still urinating. So that was my introduction, and I thought to myself, I wonder how long I'm going to be able to put up with this.
Now Hoff is in McCluskey's squadron, and they're in for a surprise. When McCluskey's bombers reach the point where the Japanese carriers are supposed to be, they see nothing but empty ocean.
We got out there, and the sun was shining, and there were a few scattered clouds around, but you could see for a long ways, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing in the water.
The dive bombers are unaware that the Japanese fleet has changed course toward the northeast, heading not for Midway, but for their real prey, Enterprise and her sister carriers. McCluskey faces a dilemma. If he keeps going, his squad will run out of fuel.
We were getting right about the end of where if we have to continue to fly with a bomb load like this, we're going to have difficulty getting back. It was going to be close.
If he doesn't turn back soon, his men will probably have to ditch in the ocean with no guarantee of rescue. On the other hand, the enemy can't be too far away, and the damage his air group could do to those carriers might save a lot of American lives in the long run. McCluskey makes a gutsy choice. He keeps going, risking a crash landing for his entire crew, for a chance to find the enemy and destroy him. And the decision soon pays off. Within minutes, McCluskey spots a tiny white wake in the ocean below.
I saw McCluskey point out to the side, and I looked down there, and all I could see was what looked like a little tiny miniature ship down in the water.
It's the Japanese destroyer Arashi, the vessel that had been stalking the submarine Nautilus. It has given up its search and is now powering back to the fleet.
And that ship was not zigzagging, it was going at what they call flank speed, which means a big bunch of water coming up behind it. They were doing 35 knots or more, and he was heading straight.
McCluskey wisely decides that if I just follow this ship back, he'll probably take me back to the Japanese carrier task force.
McCluskey changes course and tails the Arashi. If the Enterprise flyers can keep from running out of gas, they may hit pay dirt. The Arashi points directly at the target, but before McCluskey gets there, another attack begins. The Japanese carriers are hit by bombers. Pilot Harry Coral and rear seat gunner Lloyd Childers buzz in with 13 other TBDs to drop their payloads. But Japanese Zeros intercept them in an instant. Zeros have a top speed of 330 miles per hour, a rate of climb of 3,100 feet per minute, two 20-millimeter cannons in the wings. To make this agile predator even more lethal, there are two 7.7-millimeter machine guns in the engine cowling.
There was a Zero coming head on. He came right in a real steep bank over us. So I wanted to get a burst in, but I pressed the trigger. Gun was still on safety, didn't fire. And so I corrected that situation very quickly because there were several other Zeros in the area. And the best description that I can think of what it looked like was a bunch of bees attacking us.
Japanese Zero pilots are talented and disciplined flyers with years of experience. 21-year-old Lloyd Childers struggles to outgun some of the most skilled aerial warriors the world has ever seen. And being a rear seat gunner isn't easy.
It's really difficult to figure out where to shoot. You're sitting backwards and you're trying to shoot a moving target from a moving target.
A gunner aims his weapon visually, using dead reckoning, without the aid of electronics. So he must lead the target, aim in front of it, like a hunter shooting a bird. The gunners and bombers are brave, but doomed. For the third time today, American torpedo planes begin to fall from the sky.
Harry Coral said, "Look at the skipper, look at the skipper." And I've been around to look, and then I was looking right in the face of my boss, the chief radioman, and the plane was in flames. And I was looking at the chief's eyes. At first, his expression was, "What's going on?" Question mark. And then fear. He had figured it out. The airplane was burning furiously. We were obviously flying very, very low. And then the skipper's airplane hit the water.
As a rear seat gunner, Childers is facing the back of the plane, so he can shoot at Zeros attacking from behind. The Japanese fighter planes normally swoop down from above, so he's scanning upward. But he soon gets a surprise from the opposite direction. 180 degrees below Childers' aim, an enemy plane is closing in for the kill.
I looked down, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck.
In an instant, the enemy has climbed to Childers' level.
Here's a Zero, slowed down to 80 knots behind us, bobbling a little bit. He's out of ammo, and he's trying to cut our tail off with his prop.
Childers can't just open up wildly, because he'll shoot the stabilizers off his own plane. He takes careful aim through his machine gun's pipper, or sight.
I had the pipper below our horizontal stabilizer, And using the Japanese pilot's face as a target, I pushed the trigger, and he disappeared.
But Lloyd Childers' 21st birthday is far from over. Another wave of Zeros is coming at him.
I was shooting at the attacking Zero when I felt that I was hitting a leg. And I thought it was one bullet hit me, but actually it was two, in the fleshy part of my thigh. That was a surprise. For some reason, I didn't expect it. Also a surprise because it didn't hurt.
Moments later, Childers is hit yet again, this time just above the ankle of the other leg. This wound is painful, but the young man keeps up his fire at the enemy. The Yorktown torpedo bombers score no hits. Most are shot down before they ever get close enough to drop their torpedoes. The score: the Japanese have shot down 25 planes, Americans, none. But the Yorktown's disastrous attack inadvertently brings a lucky turn of events for the Americans.
The Japanese fighters were focusing on an incoming torpedo plane attack from VT-3, Yorktown's torpedo squadron, and were forgetting to look around them to see if there were additional attacks coming in.
The Zeros have temporarily left the Japanese carriers without air cover. And at just that point, Wade McCluskey and his Enterprise dive bombers appear on the horizon, like the cavalry riding to the attack. McCluskey has followed the Japanese destroyer Arashi directly to the big prize, the Japanese carrier fleet. This is the moment bomber pilot Dusty Cleese recognizes his target, the Kaga.
I could see these two great big ships, you know, that were closest to us, and then a smaller one that was farthest away. The two ones closest had to be the Akagi and the Kaga.
Lieutenant Commander McCluskey immediately orders an attack, giving instructions for the air group to split in two, with one squadron attacking the Kaga and the other attacking the Akagi.
When they sticked forward and nosed over and they looked down on the Japanese fleet, it had to have been an incredible feeling.
And they were headed directly into the wind. Boy, that's the perfect place to make an aiming spot on ships.
Heading into the wind helps a bomber and bomb stay on course. A crosswind can alter the trajectory of both. The air group begins its dive, but there's confusion initially. Everyone goes for the same ship at first, the Kaga.
We almost had some mid-air collisions because we had two squadrons that were both starting to try to dive on the same aircraft carrier.
Fortunately, one of the squadron commanders, Dick Best, alertly recognizes the error and breaks off with two other planes to attack the Akagi. At the same time, back with the main bomber group diving on the Kaga, confusion has caused the pilot of Donald Hoff's plane, James Dexter, to dive his bomber at a much steeper angle than he'd intended.
Rather than angling straight down in a 70 or 80 degree dive, he ended up over on his back, so he was over 90 degrees.
Hoff is pinned to his seat, diving backward at more than 90 degrees, when his ammunition belts begin to fall out of the plane.
They started to come out of the can. It was like a big old snake. And I couldn't do anything with the guns to hang on to them, because you don't want to have a 1,000-round ammunition belt hanging out the back of the plane as you're diving. This could be a disaster.
Hoff's pilot drops his bombs and pulls up steeply, bringing the ammo belts back into the plane. Unfortunately, the pilot's bomb has missed. Next in line is pilot Lewis Hopkins. The Georgian native is only 23 years old, but he dives as steeply as the rest of them, 13,000 feet straight down.
It takes about 22 seconds to go from altitude to your drop point, and in that period of time, it'd be 3 or 4 planes in the same dive, and so you could see the dives ahead and you could see the bombs where they were falling. Normally you drop at 1,500 feet, and I think everybody went right down to 1,500 feet.
Radio men gunners like 25-year-old Los Angeles native Ed Anderson experience the dive facing backward.
Going pretty fast, and you're pulling out a hard pull out. And when you pull out, you're just glued to the seat. You can't move until he straightens out enough.
I watched McCluskey and his two wingmen drop their bomb. They missed. And then Earl Gallagher was the next one. It hit directly about like 200 feet from the stern of the Kaga. Here was the first fighter plane taken off. This 500-pounder landed smack right on top of it, and it exploded.
Next, it is Dusty Cleese's turn, and he's willing to risk his life to hit the target.
I aimed at the big red circle at the front. Now, of course, you don't aim where it is, you aim where it's going to be. I wanted to make sure I was going to hit, so I only pulled out that thing, you know, at 1,000 feet. 9G pull out to just barely miss hitting the ocean. It hit just the rear rim of that big red circle. This thing went way, way down below deck.
James Dexter and Don Hoff also pull out very close to the water.
I was looking right at the side of the ship, and of course there were other planes that had hit and with bombs, and there were explosions, and there was smoke and fire. And about that time, he made a real sharp turn to his left.
Dexter has pulled the sharp left to avoid a Japanese cruiser up ahead.
What they started doing, they started janking, which means that they made a series of movements like this here, trying to make it a very difficult target for that cruiser to hit them.
But Dexter and Hoff soon confront a new threat.
Suddenly, in front of us are these big columns of water that are exploding, coming up in front of us. And of course, he's zigzagging, and he starts zigzagging again, or jinxing again.
The enemy cruiser is firing shells out in front of the retreating planes to alert Zeros overhead to their presence. The columns of water caused by the explosions are deadly obstacles.
And if you're not watching it, you fly into a column of water, and it's just like flying into concrete. About that time, one of those shells hit in the water right below us, and it exploded, and it lifted us right straight up in the air about 40 or 50 feet.
Even so, Dexter and Hoff managed to escape unscathed. The other pilots also make it clear without serious mishap. USS Enterprise is still 150 miles ahead of them.
Now the question was, do we have enough gas to get back to the ship?
The victors have hit hard, but they may not survive the return. And there's one more Japanese carrier still out there, preparing for an attack. June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway. Enterprise's first attack on the Japanese fleet is breathtaking. The outnumbered flyers of Enterprise have wreaked havoc on the Imperial aircraft carriers.
Kaga has been hit by the better part of 2 dive bomber squadrons from Enterprise, and she is utterly demolished. She is left burning from stem to stern almost instantaneously with a very heavy loss of life. Akagi takes longer to brew up, but is eventually consumed by the same sort of catastrophic fires that are also consuming her sister, Kaga.
And while Enterprise's bombers are tearing up these two, a third carrier, Soryu, some 5 miles northeast, has also fallen victim to the strike. Dive bombers from USS Yorktown have ravaged her.
They end up singling out the carrier Soryu, and hitting her 3 times with 1,000-pound bombs and turn her into a floating wreck as well.
20 miles away, Dusty Cleese feels it's now safe to take a look back at the results of his squadron's attack.
He could look back and he could see the 3 big balls of fire, and there was the 3 Japanese ships that were on fire. And as he was looking back, all of a sudden, one of those ships actually exploded. It must have hit the munitions that was aboard the ship. A huge mushroom cloud came up and over the top.
The surviving dive bomber crews are ecstatic with their success. But they're still in harm's way. They must make it free of the kill zone. The air is filled with angry Zeros that have just lost their home carrier. They're desperate and they're dangerous. Bomber pilot Hopkins checks to see whether his backseat partner is still okay. Ed Anderson gives the thumbs up. The SBD rear seat gunners have their work cut out for them, and this leads to some remarkable personal actions.
Rear seat gunner was firing his machine gun and it broke loose from its mount, so we actually had to manhandle it like it was a shotgun. He was a little guy, so most of the time he couldn't even carry it by himself to get it to his airplane. But I know from personal experience you can do some amazing things when you're scared.
But no extraordinary physical effort can save rear seat gunner Bruno Guido and his pilot Frank O'Flaherty. This aircrew will pay a high price for the morning's accomplishments. As the buzzing Japanese Zeros counterattack ferociously, bullets from the guns of the Zeros perforate the fuel tanks on O'Flaherty and Guido's plane. Fuel leakage eventually causes the duo to ditch in the ocean. They survive the crash, but they're discovered by the Japanese and fished from the water by an enemy warship. The Japanese crew isn't happy about the loss of 3 of the Imperial Navy's aircraft carriers. Now there's only one Japanese carrier left, the Hiryu. Hiryu remains untouched by the morning's attack from Yorktown torpedo bombers, and now she wants revenge. Now, a Japanese scout plane has just informed Hiryu of the whereabouts of USS Enterprise and her sister warships. Just before 11 a.m., Hiryu launches its bombers, a retaliatory strike. 2 squadrons of Val dive bombers, each carrying 550 pounds of explosives, head for their targets. Navigation is simple for them. They simply trail some of the returning American bombers back to their U.S. carrier group. It's quiet at midday near Enterprise and her task force. Then a faint humming sound develops in the far distance. It grows louder, gradually becoming an ominous roar. 3 miles and 180 degrees to the rear, the attack planes close in. The first line of defense are the destroyer anti-aircraft guns. If the enemy bombers make it through that, they become targets for the Enterprise Wildcats, circling the sky to shoot down bombers before they can drop their payloads. Aboard USS Enterprise, ship's bugler James Barnhill watches Enterprise fighter aircraft rush to intercept the enemy attackers.
What I could see was Japanese planes coming in after us, and our guns and planes going out like a shield and keeping them away from the Enterprise.
The first American carrier that lands in the Hiryu bomber's sights is USS Yorktown. Some of the enemy planes make it through the ship's defenses. And 3 bombs make direct hits on Yorktown's flight deck. One bomb kills 17 gunners and tears a 10-foot square hole in the center of the flight deck. Another bomb drilled its way through to the base of the smokestack before exploding and extinguishing the boilers. Multiple fires erupt. American carrier flight decks in World War II have a top layer of wooden planks. It is a way to lighten the weight of the overall ship. but the wooden surface compounds the danger when fires erupt. But the Yorktown damage control crew leaps into action, unreeling hoses and dousing burning surfaces with extinguishing foam.
And they patched the hole in the deck, they got the boilers working again.
A couple of hours later, the fire is completely extinguished. The hole in the deck is patched, and Yorktown is back underway at 19 knots. But her new lease on life is cut short. At mid-afternoon, a second wave of bombers arrives from the Hiryu. These carry torpedoes. Again, they reach Yorktown first. But since the vessel is no longer burning and has been patched so quickly, they believe it is a different carrier. 5 bombers make it through intense anti-aircraft fire and drop their torpedoes. 2 of the torpedoes score direct hits on Yorktown's port side. Again, the fires are extinguished, but this time, the damage is too severe to be repaired quickly. The listing deck is a serious problem for Yorktown's flyers. One aircrew that must bypass Yorktown is wounded rear seat gunner Lloyd Childers and his pilot Harry Coral.
We came back to the Yorktown and looking at it, noticed immediately there was about a 30-degree list. And she was dead in the water.
The angle means the Yorktown's aircraft have no place to land. Childers and Coral buzz the deck desperately, seeking a safe landing. Childers' brother Wayne is on deck. He fears his brother's foreboding from this morning has come true as the plane buzzes past. Wayne waves to show that he's okay, running the whole length of the ship, trying to get his brother to wave back. There is no response. Badly wounded in both legs, a bullet lodged just above his right ankle. The young gunner has lost an alarming amount of blood and is struggling to remain conscious. His brother can't tell if he's alive or dead.
I had my head down, and when I'd straighten up, I'd start to pass out. So I didn't look up very often. I was keeping down like this, and that's why I didn't wave, but I did look.
There's only one hope for the stranded flyers of Yorktown, the deck of Enterprise. Now the Big E does double duty, home base for both her planes and those of Yorktown. But Childers' torpedo bomber is badly damaged. They are forced to ditch in the ocean within sight of the carriers. A relieved Wayne Childers can see his brother is safe as he is fished out of the water. Lloyd Childers began the day thinking it would be his last. In fact, it has been one of the most successful days in the fleet's history so far. But there's one more enemy carrier out there, and attacks from her bombers must be put to a stop. Enterprise launches her squadrons for a final run. Their goal, the carrier Hiryu, the enemy vessel that has mortally wounded Yorktown, and some of the pilots carry a grudge.
It's a composite group from Yorktown flyers being launched from the Enterprise and Enterprise's own flyers that discover the Hiryu later in the afternoon.
After more than an hour in the air, the dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown come in range of Hiryu. Pilot Earl Gallagher is leading this attack. He plunges toward the carrier.
Just as he dropped his bomb, the Hiryu made a tight turn, you know, like this thing. And so his bombs landed exactly right where it should be, you know, if the ship hadn't made that tight turn. So I had made these corrections to hit the bow.
When Cleese dives, he doesn't make the same mistake. It's a direct hit.
It just took that front end of the Hiryu and it, like a taco, it just rolled it back on top of itself. And of course it made that ship totally useless.
The bow of Hiryu is torn apart. Fire spreads below decks. The Japanese Navy chooses to sink her. Admiral Yamamoto's plan to trap the American carriers has backfired spectacularly. In a single battle, 4 Japanese carriers are sunk. 1 cruiser is scuttled. 228 Japanese aircraft destroyed. And 3,000 Japanese sailors and crewmen are killed. Although the American losses include one destroyer and the carrier Yorktown, it is the most surprising victory in the annals of U.S. naval warfare. Yamamoto is forced to call off the attempted invasion of Midway. 24 hours after the battle, there is still one American floating alone in the sea. Ensign George Gay was shot down in the first attack and has kept himself afloat as the battle raged around him. He is finally fished from the water by a float plane. Gay is taken back to Enterprise, where he soon tracks down fellow torpedo bomber crewman Lloyd Childers, recovering in sickbay.
He didn't know me. The reason he came down at first was he heard there was a kid down there from the torpedo squadron. And he thought, maybe from my squadron. So he came down to find me as quickly as he could.
The two survivors become friends.
George Gay came down every day to visit with me and talk to me. And he told me exactly what happened, everything from beginning to end.
Word comes later that rear seat gunner Bruno Guido and his pilot Frank O'Flaherty were not so fortunate. The two men are interrogated aboard the Japanese destroyer Makigumo. Angered by their crushing defeat, the Japanese crewmen aboard Makigumo bind Guido and O'Flaherty with ropes, tie weights to their feet, and toss them overboard to drown. Back aboard Enterprise, bomber pilot Dusty Cleese discovers the fate of his best friend, torpedo bomber pilot Tom Eversole.
He didn't come back. And well, if there's any saints in heaven, he's up there now.
For the fortunate men who survived the battle, the experience creates a connection unlike any other.
When you've served time in a military unit, you forge a bond that lasts for life. You get to this level of camaraderie that I think your average civilian just can't really understand.
You lose your sense of self. It's not about you. It's about the bigger picture. It's about the unit. It's about your buddies.
Pilot Lewis Hopkins and his rear seat gunner Ed Anderson faced death in the attack that brought down the Kaga, but they lost touch after the war. When our producers contacted them, each was surprised the other was alive. Now, after 65 years of separation, the two men are about to meet for the first time since they fought side by side.
Been waiting for this for a long time.
They kept you out there a long time, didn't they?
It's wonderful to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Aging warriors, bonded souls, eternally linked by the brave deeds of their youth.
Some of those fellows never made it, you know.
Yeah.
We were one of the luckies.
The epic naval clash off Midway Island changed the face of the Pacific War. It proved that America could not only fight back, it could win. The Japanese Navy has faced tremendous loss. They sent their finest fighters and failed.
Hundreds of them were their very best pilots, and they never recovered.
The Japanese don't possess the capability of replacing those assets, whereas the sleeping giant sitting back in North America was just getting started.
Admiral Yamamoto and the Japanese High Command are shaken. They have awoken the giant and felt its wrath. In his headquarters at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Nimitz can admire the results of Enterprise's work at Midway. But codebreakers have bad news. The Japanese intend a new assault, with its eventual goal the invasion and occupation of Australia. Enterprise gets new orders. Head off the Imperial Navy and stop her. The location is an island called Guadalcanal. Enterprise is about to get her baptism of fire.